Sugarman's Midnight Special proudly presents The Commodore.
Welcome back. David Penn here. You're at the Professor Penn podcast, episode number 131, Priests, Politicians, and Kamala. Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning, David, and good afternoon, everybody.
Say, how do we pronounce her name? I'm not trying to be cute. Is it Kamala? Kamala? How do you pronounce her name?
I've always pronounced it Kamala.
Kamala.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't mean any offense. You have to understand there's brain issues. It runs in the family. My mother, when she resisted things I was doing, she would never pronounce them correctly. And I get mad at her. So I don't want to be like that, but I'm getting older. So it's setting in on me. Say that one more time.
Kamala.
Kamala.
But, I kind of get it though, because when she starts laughing, she sounds like a thirsty camel at a lake. So
Kamala.
Kamala.
Well, that sounds good to me. Sounds right. Kamala. I got it. All right, I'm good. So why do we talk about priests, politicians, and Kamala? Actually, started out there with Brick House. That's the Commodores. If you looked in the back row there, that's the now ever famous and ever fantastic Lionel Richie. He was a supporting cast member at this time with this fantastic piece of music. And I played it because I remember I was at the Black Students Union in 1977, the only white guy dancing in a room full of black people. And I mean, people were getting down. And, you know, that I was still just fresh off the bus from Minnesota. So I didn't have my I didn't have my groove on yet. That's why I was there trying to figure it out. I think I was young. Coming out of a very religious Jewish environment, I'm in a room that's just pulsating with energy in that brick house. And it made me think of Kamala because you see these pictures of her around, and she's looking fly. She's fine. She's beautiful. And I want to dispel right off the start. Remember we were talking last time, you said we should talk about this woman? Remember you
Yes.
said, who is she? And I got thinking about this, and I did all the research and went back and looked at it, and I'm looking at all the conventional wisdom. First of all, I think she's beautiful. It's just me. I'm entitled to an opinion. I think she is beautiful right now, and she was beautiful, and she's just blessed with great physical power, which is why I like to play brick house, because she's kind of a brick house. She's mighty, mighty. She really is.
Hey,
And there's
Kamala,
this,
come and join for an interview anytime.
oh
This
man,
is
she
your
just,
invitation.
well, you know, she's fine. And then people are saying she's dumb. And I'm thinking to myself, no, she's not. I look at her and I watched her. I watched lots of video of her since you told me to investigate her. Nobody is on 100% of the time. I'd like to be. I'd like to be on 100% of the time. I'm falling short, and I was up all night last night, couldn't sleep. So I fall short. And she says some things that are not right, but I think she is very intelligent. And there's all this stuff about, she was sexually involved. Irrelevant. Not relevant. Gonna leave that aside. Don't care. If you want to care, that's okay. Because we're American citizens and we're all entitled to our own opinions, and that's cool. But for me, I don't care what her sexual peccadillos are. None of my business. And I think she's smart enough to do what she's trying to do. And I think she's an actress. And I'm going to go back to what Frank Zappa said. Politics is the theater of the military-industrial complex. Elective politics is theater. It's the theater division of the military-industrial complex. It's really kind of irrelevant. They get us all diverted into this. We expend all this energy arguing with each other and hating each other. And while we're doing that, we're getting robbed. We're getting slaved out, and we're being controlled. And I just want to break out of that with this audience. And the only way we're going to do that is if we take it seriously. So I'm going to say again, precinctstrategy.com. Get off that couch. Get in the game if you love freedom, if you love faith, if you love those things, because that's exactly what the establishment wants to take away from you. Number one. Number two, your list of 20 people. Okay, come to the social media. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being an audience member. I get such positive feedback. Oh, my goodness gracious. I'm so uplifted by some of the things some of the people say. Somebody put in a chat that I was inspiring them personally. Oh, man. I mean, come on. That's just. Someone came to me and said that my activity and my communication with them, they got off a pharmacological agent they'd been on for 10 years. I saw this person. They'd lost 30 pounds. They even looked like I hadn't seen them for a long time. This person was free of drug addiction. It was drug addiction to a legal drug. He'd been prescribed something they'd been on for a long time, was wrecking them. I was very afraid to say anything to him because you know what people do for their well-being, tough to disturb. And I said to him, man, I don't know if this is good for you, but don't listen to me because I know it's serious. And he, this is the kind of thing I'm getting in my life where I'm getting to do this, and it's great. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to ask you to come on X and join and follow Royce White and Professor Penn and form a phalanx of digital warriors so that we can beat down the liars and the thieves, the priests and the politicians that are out there plying the status quo to divide the people. They're awful. And I need help, and I'm asking for help, and I'm asking you to bring people to the podcast. And if you're in Minnesota, I'm asking you to go vote on August 13th in the Minnesota primary and vote for change and vote for peace by voting for Royce White. I mean, we have to do things. I'd like to be an entertainer. I like to be entertaining.
Yeah.
I just don't do a very good job at it. I could do better. I know I could do better. I could be funnier, have more stories. And I want to do that because I want to make this enjoyable because politics does not have to be miserable. You know what makes politics miserable? Do you know what makes it miserable?
No.
People that lie.
Mm.
We had an experience right here in my home district, right here. And those people are going to be listening to me, and I'm going to not call them out by name out of courtesy because I believe in redemption and that people can change. But if anybody's listening from the party, I'm going to tell you a story. And if you don't like it, hey, I'm going to tell you what, you can go bite a hog in the ass. We have constitutions. These party units I'm asking you to join. If you get a party unit, you got 15 people party unit, and they get along pretty well, hey, that's great. You don't have to sit there with the whip and chain of rule of law. What they call it Robert's Rules of Order. It's a way of running meetings. And then each one of these organizations, if they're well constructed, have a constitution, just like our constitution, but just for our little limited area, what we do, what's our mission, and then bylaws, how we go about our business. And then there's Robert's Rules of Order, how we conduct ourselves in meetings. It's pretty complicated, actually. Most of the time, Robert's Rules of Order is used to beat down insurgents that are pissed off at the hierarchy. The hierarchy's really good at this. The citizens, not so much. And we had a thing right here in our local area where things had been done incorrectly. Let me just say that I'm going to speak just in a way that nobody's going to get in trouble because I have to see these people every day. And I want to give them a chance to heal their evil ways. And they did things that were sneaky and illegitimate and violated the constitutional process. And there's these women that are on this board, these women associates of mine. There's a group of them. I call them the machine gun crew. And maybe it's not right to identify me even as women. I don't know. We're going to talk about identity tonight. Maybe they're just American citizens. Forget about their gender. And they came to me. They've been obstructed by the hierarchy of my unit that I'm the deputy chair of. They felt obstructed, and they wrote me a formal letter, and I had no choice but to respond because that's my role as the deputy chair. I have to respond to the allegations. And I investigated, and lo and behold, you know what I found out? Sneaky things actually happened. Sneaky, backstabbing, ugly, inappropriate things had happened right on my board. And, they kind of happen because I'm on the board. Because, see, they're kind of afraid to talk to me because they know there's no BS around me, right?
And you're not saying like you're the cause of the mess.
I'm saying that because I'm there,
yeah,
I am the beachhead of what I would call the American nationalist movement. We're in Wayzata, Minnesota. It's one of the richest districts in the country. Now, just for all of you that are going to get on Professor Penn, I live in the poor part of the district. In fact, if you go across the street from my house, right across the street, it's another district, and it's not a very wealthy district. I'm on what you would call the periphery. I'm on the wrong side of the tracks, but I'm hanging around with some well-heeled dudes, right?
Yeah, Wayzata. I mean, I worked at Starbucks in Wayzata, and it was like, yeah, you were seeing 5 black cards just for people coming and grabbing their coffee.
That's crazy,
it's
right?
the richest zip code in Minnesota. I'm
yeah,
confident.
it's right. Lake Minnetonka. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I came in there, and I've been all by myself. I've been there since 2020. I've been all by myself. And people have hated me. They've been anti-Semitic. They've thwarted everything I've tried to do. They don't give any respect to the Professor Penn podcast. They don't like this audience. because this is the old guard trying to maintain the globalist construction of the Republican Party of Minnesota. But you know what? Things are changing. More and more citizens are coming in. In fact, I have a new insight, which is what the Republican Party tells its members, its officers, is that we have to go get the low information voter. Like they think you're a low information voter,
Is
low
that
propensity
a
voter.
nice way of saying I'm dumb?
That's correct. That's exactly correct. And I'm changing that now. Don't blank this out.
Okay.
I told them, and I'm going to keep telling them, these are not low information voters. They're not dumb. They're I don't give a shit voters. And they don't give a shit because the thing is so rigged and so awful, they've disengaged, which of course is the point and the purpose of having a bunch of liars leading the show. Because you just go, I don't want to participate in this. Doesn't matter what I do, the result's the same, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it feels. I mean, I personally am acting now, but in my generation, it's like, what's the point? Nothing ever changes.
We're going to change it, see, but they've been suppressing the change. So I'm the guy that's coming in there. I'm the change agent. Change agents are always resisted. But now all these other citizens are coming in, and they're bringing themselves into this political process. They're listening to War Room or InfoWars or Please Call Me Crazy or the Professor Penn podcast, or they're just mad as hell and they can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And they want to get involved. They're no longer low propensity or low information voters, which is the whole political process is based on the belief in the hierarchy that the voters, which are the customers, they're customers. I see the voters, I see you as a customer. Why do I say that? Because I'm a businessman. And what do I do with my customers? I serve them fairly, honestly, and with all my heart and soul, because I want them to treat me as I'm treating them. That way, business is fun. I've never asked this, but Ted, I'm going to tell you, I'm fun to work with. I'm fair,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yes. No, you're a pleasure to work with. I really enjoy working here. So
Because you've worked for other people, that's not so fun, right?
yeah.
You know the difference.
Yes.
Right. So guess what? I almost have no money, but I got a band of people that love coming to work in the morning. Isn't that cool? I had this guy on X. He's making fun of me. Again, this thing with the professor thing. And then there's a beautiful new associate of mine who's come in, Naomi, and she argued with him, and he made fun of her because she's written a book, and he says, that's why your book's not selling. He's, the guy's an ass, right? And I put in the chat, I posted up, I said, people write books to create.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about making money. Making money is not the measure of success, nor is having a PhD a measure of success, necessarily. We have to redefine these things. That's why we're going to talk about identity tonight. But there was this problem in our local area, which is the microcosm of the macrocosm, or as Royce likes to say, the local and the global are interrelated. And these people are lying. They're just lying.
And if they're not, they're just speaking or they're arguing very dishonestly, if that makes sense.
They're doing sneaky, backstabbing,
Yeah.
inappropriate things, which breaks down the solidarity of the board. Like, I'll give you another one. Just this guy I'm going to call out. There's a dude here in Minnesota who's somewhat well known. He's been a candidate for governor. He's run for Congress. He loses every time. His name is Kendall Qualls. And Kendall is ex-military. Don't know him personally. I have shook his hand, of course. But the last time I saw him, he came to my group, this same screwed up group of people, and he gave us a lecture, a presentation, and the summary, the statement, the tagline of the lecture was, defeat the Democrat, we have to have unity. They were talking to me, right? Because they view me as a very disharmonious figure because I have a different idea. I'd like to have peace. Oh, we don't like that. I like to balance the budget. We're not going to do that. I like to have well-being for the people. Forget about that. We don't want to talk. We just want low taxes and low regulation because they're narcissists. It's all about them. They don't want people, and then they start calling me names like, oh, you're a liberal, you're a Trotskyite. And then finally in the back of their mind, and then it finally tumbles out, oh, you're a kike. It just takes some time. Just scratch at the surface for a while.
You want me to censor out that?
Is that not a word I can say on YouTube? Are we going to get
I've gotten banned on Call of Duty before, so I'm asking you because I don't
go ahead. They'll
know.
get the audience will get the meaning. Thank you. Anyhow, he came in and he spoke to us and he talked about unity. He said, unity, 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 unity. They're talking to me. You must unify. You must unify. And, I'm an officer of the party. And I'm going to go and say right now, I don't agree with a lot of people's politics, but when we have candidates, my job is to work to get them elected. I'm okay with that. The perfect is the enemy of the good. You've heard that before. That's not a surprise, is it?
Yeah.
Right?
I know.
The perfect, we're working in a direction. And then right away, Royce got the endorsement, and Mr. Unity went out and endorsed the candidate that lost. So, this guy is a military guy, supposed to have sacred honor, just like G.I. Joe Frazier, Ukraine Joe, they call him now. He's another military guy, 26-year veteran, signed a pledge to support the endorsed candidate. Nah, Royce White won. We're not supporting him. And he was running again. And there's actually, I think, 7 or 8 Republicans on the ballot on August 13th to dilute the vote. That's how much they want Royce to lose, because Royce is a peace candidate. Royce is a change. They see him. I mean, the stuff that they put up about him is so irrelevant. We have a political class that's enslaving us to debt, getting us embroiled in wars all over the world so that they can make money. Wars for profit. Wars a racket. Mental health terrible. Physical health terrible. Food's terrible. Everything's bad. But, we don't know what they do in the bedroom. We don't know what money they stole. We don't know what they did wrong because they haven't been caught. I had one of my mentors. He used to talk to me all the time. Mr. Penn, there's the caught and the uncaught. He also used to say, not all my mentors were top quality. This guy had a lot to be desired. What he taught me how to do was to be a salesman. So, and he was, he's a little seedy. He used to say to me, there's only the caught and the uncaught. Another one of his favorite ones was, I'm okay with corruption as long as I'm in on it, which is really our political class. The whole thing's corrupt. The whole project is a cover story in corruption, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And here comes Royce White, young man, beautiful. When he goes to these events, he's mobbed like a rock star. I've never seen anything like it. Now, you know my personality. I have one relationship that I'm trying to work out, and that's my relationship with God. And I got a long way to go. I pray for forgiveness for every time I'm on with you. I pray for forgiveness for my transgressions, and I transgress willfully, and I get miserable about it. There's a scripture in the good book that says a dog will return to its own vomit, and that's the nature of sin. It's an addiction. So I'm getting close to being liberated, and that's freedom, right? Freedom. Liberation from sin. And Royce he goes to these events and he's mobbed. The people love him. I've never seen anything like it. I said I was going to put up the picture of what we saw and I forgot to send it to you. So right now, while we're here, I'm going to text this to you so I don't forget. And while we're talking about Royce in this particular spot, I would like you to put this up because I think that the people need to see how just adored he is. Here, Tanner, put this up when we're. This is a scene that happened at the Trump rally. Royce walked his rally, and he got an ovation at the level of Donald Trump. The people love him, but these pundits and pricks and priests and politicians like the RJC and the JCRC, my own Jewish community, they're ripping him down on false claims of this, that, thus, or so, which I don't even want to mention again. But the people love him, so keep going. Mark Miller, keep it up. He's a guy that represents the RJC here. I've met him, Jewish guy. Republican Party loves him. He's a salesperson for death. Keep it up, Mark. And Norm Coleman, just keep it up, you guys. Keep telling lies about Royce White because the people are going to discover them. You guys are going to sail off to oblivion in these lies you're telling because the people love Royce. So please go vote for him. But people are lying about him, and this is what makes politics so unpleasant for me, for you, for everybody. So the fundamental building block of a country, of a community, is a search for truth. I don't say I know what the truth is. I say I'm searching for it. I'm not going to just jump up and lie indiscriminately to accomplish a political goal or even a personal goal or a financial goal. It all goes, the same person that'll lie about politics, going to lie about money.
Yeah.
Going to lie about anything because they're liars. Somehow we give them a pass because that's politics, just politics. Probably at home they're okay. No, that's not the way it works. And that goes to every single politician. I don't need to criticize anybody. I just know there's a new generation coming. I'm part of bringing that forth. That is the rebirth of the philosophy of republicanism. What is that? What does that mean? See, words get hijacked. Like we're going to talk about Kamala and equity. Equity used to mean the value or the worth of your investment in a business or in your home piece of property was value. But that word's been hijacked, and we've talked about that before on the podcast. It now means equal outcomes, equity. We all end up in the same place. Very similarly, the idea of being a Republican has been hijacked by the Republican Party. And most of the people that are Republicans, I don't think, based on how they act and what they say, have any idea what it is you are supposed to practice. So we got to start right there. We've done this on some previous podcasts, but just from my meeting last night, when I was listening to people lie and BS and squirrel around and deceive, one guy, he looks at me and he makes some statement of credentialization. I looked at him and said, I don't care. I don't care what your degree is. I'm an American citizen. We're not here because of degrees. We're here because of a common bond of being American citizens. And that's another theme tonight because there's all this about identity. All this about identity. The Jewish identity. Kamala's identity. We're going to get into it. Before we do, blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating the light and the dark. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating me in your image. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for making me an American. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for making me free. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for healing the blind. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for feeding the people. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for releasing the bound. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for raising up the downtrodden. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for creating the heavens and earth. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for providing for all my needs. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for directing my path. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for my American courage. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for crowning America with glory. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for restoring strength to the weary. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds. Thank you for sending a Messiah that I might be saved. Forgive me, my Father, for I have sinned. Pardon me, my King, for I have willfully transgressed. For you pardon and forgive. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds, who is gracious and ever willing to forgive. Well, Uh, I certainly see how people can go 4 hours. I'm going to try to keep it in the center of the road tonight. I really appreciate when you stay with me. Please bring people to the podcast. You know, the algorithms are never going to support the growth of the Professor Penn podcast. So when you tell your friends and you bring them into the live chat, and new people come all the time, we're getting new people all the time. You know what? Yes, I would like to monetize through tireget.com, which is everything you need in tires. You call in, we'll get you the tires that you need. The price will be right, the service will be right. We're doing that to support the growth of the movement. And I'm not a communist. So if I could sustain myself and not go bankrupt, that'd be great. That would be fantastic. So I'm asking for your support. I'm asking you to the Free People's Store. We need your support. We do. We need you to bring people. We need you to spread the movement. This is not going to happen. We're a real movement. Here in Minnesota, we got this going on. And I'm sure it's going on in every state or most states. I just don't need to know what's going on in Louisiana. We have a way politics works strategically. No different than if I was leading a platoon and I was in a area of a line of conflict, I'd be paying attention to what I was doing, lest I lose my focus and lose my grip. So we've got it going on. We're very focused on Minnesota. So if you're in Minnesota, please contact me. And a lot of people do. And I know a lot of Minnesotans watch this, and we're organizing. And this organization goes far beyond this campaign. This organization is a permanent effort to rebirth republicanism as a philosophy in the state of Minnesota. Now, could you please play number 2? It's going to take a little bit. It's not a short piece. Please play number 2.
We are now being joined by Edward P. Joseph, who's a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and Foreign Policy analyst from Washington, D.C. Mr. Joseph, always a pleasure speaking with you. I want to just instantly, understand this aspect of it. Everyone knows that Haniyeh was based in Qatar. Now, to carry out the assassination, of course, there has been no party has come forward and taken responsibility for it. Whoever did it, the fact that they chose to do it in Tehran instead of Qatar, what kind of messaging is this?
Well, first, also very good to be with you. And I'll tell you, it's very clear. If it was Israel, and of course you're correct in saying that we don't know that, but if we're operating on that assumption, Israel would not want to take out such a strike on Haniyeh and take him out in Qatar or, for example, in Turkey, where he also moved, because that would be extremely serious for Israel. It would alienate countries in which Israel has communication, however difficult at times, but Israel has communication. Iran is a sworn enemy of Israel, has vowed to destroy Israel. So it's completely logical that, again, if this was Israel, that it would take the opportunity to eliminate Haniyeh in Tehran. And then if we go further with this and examine the timing, it also is logical. It comes after another Iranian proxy, this time not Hamas, but Hezbollah, targeted a Druze village. And we should emphasize that this is Israel's response on behalf of Israeli citizens who are Druze, who are not Israeli Jews. These are Arabs. And Israel, acting on behalf of those citizens, those Druze citizens of Israel, took out, as your correspondent stated, Fuad Shukr in Beirut. And of course, this is another message to Iran that if it does not control its proxies, whether Hezbollah or Hamas, there will be a cost to be paid. And finally, just let me say what that cost is. This is hugely embarrassing for Iran. To hear this was done at the events of the inauguration of Mr. Pezeshkian, now the new president of Iran, with many foreign dignitaries present in Tehran. And for the Iranians to fail to be able to protect an obvious target, a clearly very obvious target in Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran is hugely embarrassing, and it's another signal to Tehran that if it was Israel, it shows Israel has the capabilities to penetrate Iranian intelligence. Please.
Mr. Joseph, now, if the most obvious thing to think about next is what kind of reaction are we expecting, what kind of a fallout, or what kind of consequences are we expecting? I'd like you to just weigh in on that from both fronts. How do you feel Hamas will be able to continue its war with Israel, and also how do you feel Iran would be reacting to this? It is, if it is Israel or anyone else, it is a major embarrassment.
Yes, indeed. Let's take those two separately. For Hamas, we've seen, it's not me making this comment. We're reading comments of figures in Hamas and others who are knowledgeable about Hamas who say that this is a major blow to lose Hania. And it will, of course, in terms of the actual operations on the ground, I don't believe we'll expect much change with respect to that, because we know that Sinwar is still calling the shots from safely ensconced in a tunnel in Gaza, and we should expect probably little change. The only question we would have is about the dynamics in the ceasefire talks.
Yes.
That are still being held, and it remains to be seen the kind of impact that would have. With respect to Iran, it does not, it of course does raise tensions. There's no question about that, but it doesn't necessarily lead to some type of escalation on the part of Iran. Iran has lost other figures, including senior military commanders, to Israeli strikes. And the bottom line is, it is not apparently in Iran's interest, as they deem it, to have a war with Israel. Iran prefers to keep these proxies at its disposal, to allow these proxies to hit Israel, to strike shipping in the Red Sea. And that's what Iran likes to do, and does not seem to want a direct confrontation with Israel. Please.
I get your point, Mr. Joseph. Thank you so much for joining in. That was Edward P. Joseph from Aspen, Colorado, Senior Fellow at Johns Hopkins University. Always a pleasure getting your insights on matters which are, of course, keen concern at the moment.
So, what do we have? The news that matters. We have Israel assassinating Ismail Hania, who was the senior political figure of Hamas. They killed him in Tehran, Iran. He was attending the inauguration of the new president there. We covered that event several podcasts ago. And at the same time, Fuad Shukr, who was a senior military commander of Hezbollah, there's three proxies of Iran. They say proxies. These are groups that the Iranian regime funds, organizes, trains, directs to some degree, or maybe completely. We don't know. I don't know. I'm not there. But we got the Houthis in Yemen, who are obstructing the flow of shipping in the Red Sea. We've got Hamas, who are, in the Gaza Strip, and they're at war with Israel, and there's a terrible battle going on there. And then we have Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, taking over Lebanon. Hezbollah is very well armed and trained, and they're right on the Israeli border, and they're shooting rockets into Israel almost every night. So this rocket fell on Israel and killed a bunch of young people. They were children, really. They were, as was said, they're Druze, so they're not Israeli Jewish people. They're Israeli Arab people. And immediately that community, the Jewish community, said that they were people of the book, they were monotheists, and there should not be one drop of blood shed out of revenge. But, hey, that was a press release, because what the Israeli Army, military, Air Force, the Air Force did, is they killed two very senior people immediately. And why it's embarrassing, what's becoming clear is that the superiority of American military equipment, it's so superior to what the Iranians have either in their own country or what their proxies have, that they're just, their proxies are getting slaughtered. And, the Israeli military is off the chain right now. We have a globalist government here in the United States. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. It seems to me as if at the High Council, because there is one, and it's not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They're political theater. They're actors. I'm talking about the people that really make the decisions. It's not the people we think are making decisions. How do we know it? Because our president's been non compos mentis for 4 years, right? He resigned because he can't go forward. And Kamala, not very long ago, people were saying she was, dumb as a sack of rocks. I think she's smart enough to be the mouthpiece, the spokesperson of the people that are running the show. And I think that group has decided it's time to get beyond this issue and get to the next issue. And here's the next issue. Why are the Iranians not attacking? Well, maybe by the time this goes up tonight, they're going to attack. They've attacked before. Remember when Iran launched 300 missiles at Israel?
Yeah.
Yeah, all got shot down. It was an interoperable air defense system. It was the United States. It was France. It was Saudi. It was Jordan. It was Israel. Interoperability. There was no damage really to speak of. The Iron Dome prevailed. Maybe they'll do it again. That's more theater. But what they're really doing is they're getting the nuclear weapon. They can't defeat Israel with conventional weapons. They can't do it. The question becomes, well, how are they going to get a nuclear weapon into Israel? We're going to find out. Because this kind of embarrassment, this kind of, different groups have different levels of pride, face, like the Chinese. Man, you take a Chinese person's face, that's the end of the story right there. All done. You're an enemy. And they don't forget it because they don't have a redemptive process. Their process is, don't screw up in the first place. Interesting, isn't it? Because, they put salt, we put salt on our popcorn and they put sugar on theirs. We have a redemptive process. We bake into our cake that people screw up. And then we have all kinds of mechanisms for people to redeem themselves. That doesn't really work in the Chinese way. They've put all their chips on, don't screw up in the place. They're a little bit Jewish, to be frank with you. Anyhow, these people in the Middle East, they got a lot of pride. These people are prideful. So when you embarrass them, when you start killing people in their capital, you start wiping out their senior leaders, they don't like it. They don't like it at all. And if you remember President Trump, he assassinated the head of the Revolutionary Guard. And now the security state has been putting out, our security state, that the Iranians are seeking to kill President Trump in revenge for that assassination. And the Iranians, interestingly, said, got nothing to do with us. We don't want to do it. We're not doing it. So I'm saying this kind of destabilization, this kind of craziness opens the door for a lot of things to happen, and I'm not going to know what's really happening. And you're not going to know what's really happening. And you're not going to know what's really happening. But you're going to tune on the news, and there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to tell you exactly what's happening. That's propaganda. And please remember that because, things are going to go down between now and the election. The Ukraine got its first delivery of U.S.-made F-16 fighters. This is somewhat theater also. This is called military-industrial complex theater. These jets are not game changers. They're not. It's part of the escalation. Escalating. We're escalating. And I remember when this thing started, President Biden said, we're not giving any jets to the Ukrainians. It could lead us to World War III. But, hey, we did it. Isn't that great? White House approves nearly $3 billion in weapons in a sale to Saudi Arabia. Saudi. Now, the Democrat Party is very critical of Saudi Arabia when they're out of power. Because guess what it is? It's a monarchy. There's no rights for gay people in Saudi Arabia. Women are veiled and they can't, maybe they can drive now, but not very long ago, and probably most of them still cannot drive cars. Women are living in homes with 3 other women under Muslim law. They have a polygamous way of doing things there. They're not very liberal. They're not liberal. They're illiberal. In fact, they're monarchical. And that is where we get into the republicanism idea, because republicanism is the repudiation of monarchy, which we're going to keep talking about. We got to get that right. Got to know who we want to be. We don't know where we come from. How do we know where we are? Anyhow, there are still monarchies in the world, and one of the monarchies left is Saudi Arabia. And of course, if Saudi wasn't sitting on an ocean of oil, nobody would care about them. But they are sitting on that oil. So, very important partner, a partner in the United States Middle East military industrial complex strategy, the money-making strategy. $3 billion. $3 billion. 40%? Would you say 40%? 40% on $3 billion. Hey, that's a lot of profit. Lot of profit. $1.2 billion of profit. That lifts up the stock. That makes the stock market go higher. You look at your 401k, you go, man, life's not bad. Except what you're doing with that 401k and that IRA is you're part of the war machine. The sale includes joint mission planning software. That's that interoperability. Saudi is working with us. In fact, we're one happy family. You know, the liberal Democrat, Kamala, going to be president. She's sitting there with MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, at the table. This guy's got 400 children and a harem, and he's the ultimate dictator of the country, and his will be done. And she's going to sit right at the table with them. And they're equals on the stage. Because when it gets down to it, she's a salesperson. Our elected officials, I said this at my meeting last night, the tail wags the dog. That's not the way it's supposed to be. We are the American citizens. Our will be done. They're our elected representatives. So you get the government you deserve when you don't vote. What you get is a 401k. You think life's good. I don't got to pay attention. And you're killing people. Have a little self-reflection. If you put your money into an enterprise, I'm an investor. Like in the mafia, you had the Italian knuckle draggers, the back breakers, the leg breakers. Then you had the Jewish guys that were in there, right? The Jewish mobsters. They were the brains of the organizations, allegedly. Some of them weren't. There was Bugsy Siegel. He liked to kill people. But there was like Meyer Lansky. He was the brains of the organization. He was invested in the mob's business. Doesn't that mean if he's an investor, his gains are related to how the business is run? That's every American citizen. The gains that we're gaining, the cost is death. Interoperability, joint mission planning software, and cryptographic devices, codes, contract engineering to build our bases there, technical and logistics support services so we can get our military hardware there because they steal it, right? It's not really stolen. They just take it out of inventory and they pre-position it, getting ready for the battles to come. And, the Saudis, they got their own things going on. They've killed at least 377,000 people fighting in where? In Yemen against the Houthis. Because before the British went into the region, if you remember, there was no Yemen. Yemen is a constructed country, constructed by the British so they could control the mouth to the Red Sea with a handful of people. It used to be called South Arabia, like Saudi Arabia. Saudi's the family. It was called Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. And then when the House of Saud drove out the Hashemites, drove them into Jordan, They're now ruling Jordan. Drove them out with the Wahhabis. They set up the Saudi Arabia. Used to be Hashemite Arabia. Oh, people say to me, how do you know so much about this stuff? I have no idea. I don't know. I've been reading since I remember laying on my mom and dad's carpet in my house at 631 South Warwick in St. Paul, 64, 65, 66. I was young. I was already reading the newspaper cover to cover. I don't know why I was doing that. I don't know why. But the hits keep on coming. Here's $500 million in new military aid for the Philippines. Hey, let's not leave out the Philippines. The Philippines used to be a colony of the United States. We shed blood there. We had a huge battle with the Japanese in the Philippines. Terrible. MacArthur went and he came back. I shall return. Look it up. The Philippines had a brutal dictatorship. Brutal when I was 10's age. They had a guy there. The guy's name was Ferdinand Marcos. His wife, they made fun of her. They went in her closet. She had 5,000 pairs of designer shoes. The people are starving to death, and she's got 5,000 pairs of shoes. I can't forget it. So the people ran her out. Guess what? I don't know how this happens. His son's now in charge of the Philippines. You get the government you deserve. He's back on the payroll. 500 million. South China Sea has turned into a potential flashpoint for a war between the U.S. and China since we the people, Washington, has vowed that the U.S.-Philippine Mutual Defense Treaty applies to attacks on Philippine vessels in the waters in the South China Sea. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, a would-be and wannabe guitar player, repeated that pledge during his recent visit. Quote, "We stand by our ironclad defense commitment to the Philippines under the Mutual Defense Treaty. That extends to armed attacks on Filipino armed forces, public vessels or aircraft, including the Coast Guard, anywhere in the Pacific, including the South China Sea." Hey, let's just keep rattling them sabers. Because guess what's happening? Time to get drafted. Tanner, your draft age, you better vote on our August 13th. Right now, more and more countries are instituting mandatory conscription. The Baltic states, Scandinavia, they're all in on it. Latvia, Norway, England's getting ready to do it. Lithuania, Sweden, hey, they're coming with this conscription. And here's a quote from a guy I think is awful. His name is General Wesley Clark. And General Clark was the former Supreme Allied Commander of Europe in his tenure. He was, in NATO. A globalist, a more committed globalist cannot be found than General Wesley Clark. He's very hawkish. He goes, NATO must rebuild our defenses, including the mandatory military drafts. I think you're going to like this. This is directed right at you. This is he's a commentator now on CNN. Got a good gig working for the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. I think young people in Europe and the United States, Tanner, you're a young person, will come to realize that your generation, like the generation that fought in World War II, which didn't ask to become the greatest generation, it's just that the circumstances are going to thrust this burden upon you.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Lovely. When do I escape the draft age? I
Go
got
to
2
the
years.
Go to the polls on August 13th. Have you ever voted in a primary before?
No.
Are you registered to vote?
No.
We're going to get you registered.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're going to register you to vote. You go to the polls on August 13th, and you vote for Royce White because these assholes, these backstabbers, have run 7 or 8 Republicans. I'll tell you a story. Let's not talk about these assholes. I'm going to talk about an asshole I loved. My Uncle Benny. He's been dead for many years. Uncle Benny was a crook, a criminal. He was in the Jewish mafia. Yes, somebody actually said that I was in the Jewish mafia, that I threatened them with a gun. I mean, these people are goofy. My Uncle Benny, he's my great uncle. He was a mafia guy. And there was a governor here in Minnesota he didn't like. Couldn't bribe him. The guy had some sacred honor. The election came up. The guy had a common name. My uncle found 9 candidates with the exact same name. The guy lost. Because how are people going to tell? You know, here's a Johnson, there's a Johnson, everywhere's a Johnson. Who's the Johnson? It's like a shell game. Who's the Johnson? That's what they're doing to Royce in the primary. There's all these Republican candidates. Royce has by far and away the greatest name recognition, but when the 75-year-old lady from, the middle of nowhere, Minnesota goes into the polls and she looks at the list, hey, she's not watching the NBA. She's not going to know who Royce is. They even ran a woman on this ballot. Her name's Gruenhagen. She ran as a leftist Democrat in the last 2 election cycles. She's the only woman. So when the women go into the polls, oh, it's a woman. They don't know that she's not a Republican. She's a Democrat. And we don't know how many Democrats are going to cross over because Amy Klobuchar is truly threatened by Royce White. But many plans arise in the hearts of men. It's the plans of God that always prevail. Pentagon found another $2 billion for Ukraine aid. Just popped up out of nowhere. They cooked the books. They said, oops, we were using replacement value. We should have used depreciation value. We overstated the value of what we were transferring. That gives us another $2 billion. Let me ask myself a question. If there's a shell that's not spent, how does it depreciate? It's not a car. It doesn't wear out. If it wears out, it's worthless. It doesn't depreciate. So in other words, they're saying, we're going to send depreciated weapons over to the Ukrainians. We hope they work. Now, that's not what they're doing. They're playing games. They're playing games because the Russians are breaking through in the Donetsk region. The Ukrainian army is collapsing in that area. We've been talking about Syria. 8 countries have now urged the European Union to renew their ties with the Assad regime in Syria because the globalist attempt to unseat Assad has failed. So we have, even at the globalist table, a disagreement about how things are going to work. That's good. Foreign ministers from Italy, Cyprus, Slovenia, Slovakia, Austria, the Czech Republic, Greece, and Croatia have drafted a paper calling for a change in the European Union's approach to Syria. That's great. End of war. End the war. End the war. End the war. Just end the war. Got to start there. Nothing matters till we end the war. Talk a little bit about the economy. China has reduced its interest rates, its central bank rates. Britain last night reduced its rates by 25 basis points. Japan reduced its rates by 25 basis points. It's not that inflation is over. It's not. I know that. What it is everything's going to be over. When you keep the hammer on like this long, you start choking people out. I'm one of those people. And the interest rates that Chinese firms pay, and I compete with these people, the interest rates that these people are paying is so much lower than what I'm paying, it's really an unfair advantage. One might think if he was sitting at the bar drinking a Mac 12 by himself, contemplating and hoping that you're going to go to tireget.com, TIREGET.com, or call in, hoping for a miracle, that my government really just wants to put me out of business. And I said this to somebody that I work with. They're just putting all the little people out of business. They're just doing it. So when that happens, and there's no downward price pressure by people who operate more efficiently, you're going to pay more for everything. And that's their game. Kamala. We're going to talk a little bit about Kamala. I did a lot of research on her, and I was up in front of this before everybody was on it. And then I looked at what everybody was doing, and, I don't like to walk the same road as everybody else. And just this morning, I got thinking about this, and I said, man, this is not the way to do this. No, I realized that there's an unending stream of Black Americans in my ex that are saying I'm a foundational Black American, and I'm not going to vote for Kamala. And I talked with Royce, and he explained to me that because Kamala's father is Jamaican, and there's a difference in culture, we view, and I said this last podcast, that we view communities as monolithic. Like, we view the Jewish community, if you're not in the Jewish community, all Jews are the same. And if you're an anti-Semite, they're double the same. They're all Jews, right? There's so much variability in the Jewish community. If you get, there's an old saying, you're going to laugh. I've said this before. It's funny. If you get 3 Jews in a room arguing, you get 4 opinions. So, we don't agree about anything. We're not a monolith. And neither is the black community. And there's kind of a soft racism in that I would think that all black people are black, the same. But this gets into the issue of identity, and identity is constructed. It's a social construct. And what foundational black Americans that were here, their roots go back to the slavery era. They're foundational. They don't see Kamala as being a black American because her father was Jamaican and her mother was Indian. And they're saying that's an appropriation, a misappropriation of the American black foundational identity. And I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm just going to say that's the facts. That's what people are saying. I did note, and since I come out of this environment, I do understand it, that Kamala's father, Donald Harris, was a radical economist. He started at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. You can't get any more radical than Madison. My sister went there, sent there by my radical parents. Isn't that great? Wow. You want to talk about where this communism comes from, which is an anti-God ideology, comes off the campuses. We're going to talk about that. Donald Harris then joined the Stanford faculty, and Stanford's great. I got into Stanford. Not good enough for my dad. All you Stanford graduates, hey, it's a great school. I begged him to go there. He said, you're not going to California, my son. He knew that California might lead people like me astray. No problem. I went astray regardless. Donald Harris joined the Stanford faculty in 1972. He looks quite radical. I'm looking at a picture of him. You might want to put that up. I see this guy's face in his look, and I grew up with these people. These people are radical. They were seeking to overthrow the status quo. This guy could have sat in my living room with my father, and they would have broken bread and had a great conversation about how they were going to undermine and overthrow the military-industrial complex of the 1960s and 70s. That's what they were working on. Anyhow, this guy was a radical communist. So the word around the campfire is that Kamala and her father didn't get along. Well, guess what? I didn't get along with my father for decades. And I find myself influenced by his work, acknowledging him with love, recognizing that he was the academic that opened up the dialogue that revealed that Darwin and Spencer and Galton were awful racists, that Darwinism was racist. These were racists, British racists. Nobody had ever said that before my dad. So he got along great with a guy like Kamala's father because they were working on the same thing from different angles. And they won. They took that whole group of academics in the universities down that were holding the power and perpetuating the military, industrial complex. But guess what the government did? They funded education. So a guy like Donald Harris at Stanford in the 70s was making, I don't know, 20 grand a year, 25 grand a year. That same position today, $275,000 a year. My dad's position when he was at the university in the 60s, I think he made 13 grand a year. Today, that position, $175,000 a year. They gave the universities money, and they took all these radicals, the ones that they could get to sell out, and those dudes sold out. They sold out. They sold out for the cash. So while they're still espousing this kind of radical identity politics, it's no longer aimed at overturning the status quo. It is the status quo. So I got thinking about all this stuff, and I have all these notes on Kamala that I'm going through, and I just want you to go over to Tanner, the one that really matters to me, which is number 6.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place, right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners.
I don't want to talk about this woman as if she's dumb. She's not. She's very smart. I can see the intelligence in her eyes, and I can hear it in how she talks. I don't want to talk about her identity because I'm not qualified to talk about it. I'm not. I'm going to talk about the Jewish identity probably for the rest of Professor Penn podcasts because that needs a lot of work. That's my line of country. But I want to talk about republicanism and what equity really means because everything's about branding and words. And, if she said, I'm a communist and we're going to have a communist country, there's still enough people here in America that would reject because so much effort was made to overcome communism, and we fought a Cold War to overcome communism. We don't like the communist Chinese. Communist has an awful association for still the majority of Americans. And there's a lot of Americans that are really honest about it. We want a communist country. And she's saying that we don't all start in the same place, but we all need to end up in the same place. That's equity. What she's saying is that her goal as a politician, and I'm playing this because it doesn't matter what else she says. It just doesn't matter how she covers it up from now on or how the Democrat Party covers this up. What they've become is a communist party. So we all end up in the same place through policy. And they use identity politics. If you notice at the end, she was talking about the Black community. Yeah. They don't start in the same place. So that's what the professors do in the universities. They identify, because they're leftists, they're Democrats, they're communists. They identify all these cultural differences, like women. Women were property not that long ago. Property. Black people were property. Indians suffered genocide. We can go through every one of these groups. These people coming up from Central and South America, they're poverty stricken, and there's an identity politics. There's a silo for every one of these groups where their grievance is identified, magnified, and then exacerbated as a tool to create an equitable outcome where everyone has the same outcome. There's a couple of things that they're not telling us. Number one, it's not like everybody's going to be living in a $500,000 home in the suburbs with 2 cars in the garage. That's not the outcome they're seeking. what they're convincing everybody is that nobody's going to have anything. Whereas the World Economic Forum, the one of the railheads of communism says to your generation, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You're not going to have anything because having things is really bad for you. You're a materialist. So what a scam this is. We don't believe in God. There's no spiritual life, but we're not even going to give you a material life because your purpose is to be inventory. You're an eater, and we're going to extract profit from you from birth to death through food, which we're going to control, food that's going to make you ill, or your lifestyle choices are going to make you ill. And I don't think YouTube can argue with me about this because it just came out that it was on Google that 40% of cancers are lifestyle choices. 40% of cancer deaths are not genetic, they're cultural choices. And that's just a number they threw out there. How do I know the number's right? I didn't do the research and statistics. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. It could be 90%. It could be 10%. If it's 1% of people dying because we're living in a culture that creates unwellness and death, we can ameliorate that. But and I'm not picking on Kamala. I'm talking about this whole ideology. It does not believe in God. So there's no spiritual succor, like the poor people of every country. Like Jamaica, I've been to Jamaica, and I love Jamaica, where the aspiring president comes from, her father, her roots. I met a guy there one time, lived in a cave. I was there on a 2-week trip many, many decades ago. And this guy lived in a cave, He was so happy. And the Jamaicans were living in tar paper shacks. I mean, really. And of course, when I went to the resort said, don't leave the resort, it's dangerous. So what was the first thing? I was like 35 years old. 35 years old, hey, I was looking for trouble. So the first thing I did, baby, kids, I'm taking a walk. And I walked down the beach, right? And these people were living in abject poverty, and they were happy. They were really happy. So they had a spiritual life. They were Rastafarians. And I went there because I was interested in Rasta because I love Bob Marley. So I said, I'm not staying in this hotel. And I went right out into the Jamaican countryside and hung with the Rastas. And I could do it most of the time. One time it didn't work out so good, but most of the time was cool. And they had a spiritual life. They didn't have anything materially. They had a spiritual center that was beautiful. But these people that are running our deal here, they're denying the spiritual life and the material life simultaneously so that all we become is a number from which profit is extracted. And that's the other part they don't tell you. We're all equity, but someone's got to run this machine, and they're up on the top, a handful of them, dictating to all the rest of us how the profit's going to get extracted out of us. How could I vote for this? And why can't we get leadership that can articulate this? Why are our leaders so interested in, and I know Royce talked about it, and he can because he's a black man. Why are our white leaders, and what is white and black? We have the same genetics. We're all descendants of the same line. The only difference between us is the amount of melanin in our skin. I'm not going to hate myself because a black person got more melanin than I did. They got more of it. Okay, that's the difference? No, there's a bunch of cultural differences and constructed differences over the amount of the skin tone of people. You have to know we're not too bright sometimes, that we're children of God, that we have unalienable rights granted to us by a creator. But what these people are trying to do, what their goal is, because they don't believe in the Creator, at best, at worst, they might believe in the anti-Creator. A moment of silence to think about how these people have so much power. If they don't believe in God, where's all that power coming from for them to rule over us, to convince us that we don't all start in the same place, so some people might need more? That's a lie. They don't want to give them more. They want everyone to have less so we can be controlled. These people lie. This is the problem with politics. So when I see people lying on my own board, if you're watching me and you're on my board, we don't have to agree with each other. Don't lie to me. Because if you get caught lying from this moment forward by me, you're not going to get away with it. I've let a lot of little white lies and even worse lies go. I've let them go. Like Alex Plekish, who was our national committee man, running up on the stage when Royce got the endorsement and standing there with Royce White for Senate sign and acting like he supported Royce. I let it go. I let it go. Hey, you know what? I don't want to fight every fight. But because the lying is so pervasive, and it's all one lie, just different variations thereof. So when we pick on ourselves, I don't want to lie to myself. That's number one. That's why I pray for forgiveness for my transgressions. Can't lie to myself. Can't lie to the people around me. Once I perfect that, and I'm getting real close, I'm not there. I'm not there. I would be lying to you if I told you I was there. But when I get there, I will have the spiritual authority to rebuke lies. And that's where we got to start if we want to have a country. Because these people are globalists. They don't care about the United States of America. They care about making people into inventory so that the people they represent, they're not running it. They're representing the people who are running it. Those people, they want human beings to be no different on the Matrix. The Matrix, go back, and we're going to play a little bit Matrix soon. Copper tops, batteries. We are just something to extract energy from. That's monarchy. We got a group of overlords, and everybody else is a serf, a feudal serf. That's why they're pushing equity. And doesn't it sound good to those that have less? Oh, man, I can get over. I can catch up. No, they're not going to catch you up. They're going to bring everyone down to your level. And I can testify to it because at 8% interest, it's happening to me. It's happening. The water's creeping up the side of the mountain. Eventually, they'll get to the tallest of the little people, and then everybody will have nothing. I will not be happy, but I have faith. So I'm going to be happier than a person who has no faith and no material success. You know what they're going to give those people? Porn, drugs, video games.
And then they'll legalize self-euthanizing. I bet that will be the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Kelly Morrison, who is being opposed here in SD45, in CD3, Kelly Morrison, she was the state senator from my district, SD45, the Dr. Kelly Morrison. She's now running for Congress. Her tagline is, "We need a doctor in the House." She sponsored the abortion bill that allows for abortion at birth, 9-month abortion, and she's working on a euthanasia bill so that in Minnesota it's legal to kill yourself. Isn't that great?
So that is a real thing.
It's a real
that
thing.
That was completely me just thinking of an idea.
No, they're
what
working on it. You're exactly correct. You're ahead of the curve. You see where these people are going. Thank you for bringing it up. So her district is now open. We have a candidate named Kathleen Folk who's running to replace Kelly Morrison in the state Senate of Minnesota. You know, that's important. And then there's a gentleman named Tad Jude, who's running for Congress here against Kelly Morrison. He's the Republican, traditional. Here's Kelly Morrison. She's also representing the traditional, but with a difference. I don't think Tad Jude is promoting euthanasia. So we've got some real life and death issues to deal with. But my point, I want to leave out everything else about Kamala Harris. I think she's smart. I think she's beautiful. It's not my place to comment on her identity. I'm going to work on the Jewish identity coming up soon. She's promoting a world in a very tricky, sneaky, and lying way where you're going to own nothing and you're going to be miserable. How do we get here? How do we get here? I always want to look back and how do we get here? How did we get back to the beginning? Because in the beginning, there was kings. There was kings and queens and priests. And it goes right back to the Old Testament. We had a priestly class. Have you ever heard of Aaron?
Like the name Aaron?
Aaron.
No,
Okay.
not biblically.
Okay, biblically. Have you heard of Moses?
Yeah, I've heard of Moses.
Okay, Moses had a brother. Did you know Moses had a brother?
I guess I did, but I didn't know it was Aaron.
It's Aaron. He had a brother. And they were the poster child of love between brothers. They worked together hand in glove. And part of the law given to Moses at Sinai granted Aaron the priesthood for himself and his male descendants, and Aaron became the first high priest of the Israelites. In other words, Aaron, who was thought to be a supremely righteous man, a prophet, was given the monopoly on the intermediary relationship between God and the Israelites, the people. It didn't even work when Aaron was cooking because he had problems, and there's a lot of criticism of some of the things that he did. But generally speaking, his two sons were killed for not being pure enough to be priests right before his eyes. I mean, the idea of being a priest, that's why I say I'm not there yet. I mean, when you start messing around with this energy, when you say I'm speaking for God and you're not, you're a setup for big trouble. So that's why I say I'm searching for truth. I'm not saying I'm the truth. Let's get that right. Because some of these people that watch me, man, they're dumb and evil, and they want to set me up. I am certainly not trying to make any comments like this. The model of the priestly class, the priests, the Levites, and get a kick out of this for those of you who are Star Trek friends, like my friend Dave, who I'm going to see soon. Spock used to say, live long and prosper, and he'd go like this. When you're in synagogue, those people that are in that tribe, the Levite tribe, they know who they are. They're the priestly class. Live long and prosper, okay, like this. That's actually the little hand sign, little hand magic in the tribe, so you know who's got the juice. In the book of Exodus, in Leviticus and Numbers, in all three books, it's maintained that Aaron received from God a monopoly over the priesthood. A monopoly. We have antitrust laws to break up monopolies. Monopolies end up bad. They did in this case. On the day that Aaron was consecrated as the high priest, his oldest sons were burned up by divine fire. In other words, his boys were not good enough to make the cut. His sister Miriam was punished, given a severe skin disease. Aaron pleaded with his brother Moses to intercede. Miriam was healed. So even the people at the top of the funnel here couldn't live up to the divine mandate that they were being given. Moses struck the rock. He didn't get to go into the promised land. Lost his temper. I lose my temper all the time. Where am I getting to with this? I'm going to put down the notes. Republicanism. This priestly class comes from Aaron. There is a tribe, the tribe of the Levites. They were the priests. When the Israelites went into Israel, all the other tribes got lands and flocks and bequeathments, and they were set up financially. They got a stake in the game, but not the Levites. They didn't get any money. What they got was everybody had to give them a piece of the action. They got a commission on everything that went on because everybody had to render to God at the temple. And this thing got perverse. We know that because Jesus went in the temple and turned over the table of the money changers. You know, when you're a priest, look at all the things we got going on. That's right. The Catholic Church, the priests are crazy, right? It's terrible. Same thing with the rabbis, probably. Just didn't come out yet, or it will someday. Of course, the rabbis can get married. Maybe that helps. I don't know. I know a few rabbis wrapped me around over the years. Anyhow, this priestly class was supposed to intermediate between God and man. And it broke down. The priests got on the payroll to become politicians. They were no longer priestly, they were political. Or more political than they were needing to be. They became perverse. They were no longer able to intermediate between God and the people. They were in it for themselves, like our politicians are today. That priestly class is the model of who our politicians are today. That priestly class failed, and it failed fantastically over thousands of years. First, it failed for the Israelites, and the Israelites were sent out into the diaspora. They lost they lost the Holy Land. They were punished because the priestly class could no longer intermediate between God and man because they gave up that status. They gave up on the search for truth, and they picked up the search for cash and, women, I'm sure. No doubt. Because they were men. Easy to corrupt a man.
Boobs are awesome.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Tanner. Maybe you should blank that one out too. Yeah, that'll be your discretion. Anyhow, the point is this. This priestly idea spread to the Catholic Church. So the whole Catholic hierarchy they call them priests. They became co-conspirators with the monarchies, which were hereditary monarchies, father to son, father to daughter. And they derived their divine status by being endorsed by the priest. They had a business going on. They had rulers and priests that represented them with the people. The king didn't really talk to the people. The priests went out and dealt with the people. Keep the machine running, Father. Work hard. The heaven's coming. I'm not saying anything negative about heaven. I'm saying they used heaven as a mechanism of control. I'm not saying there's not heaven. There's a difference between something we aspire to and something that's used as a cudgel to control us. So people, recognizing their freedom had been usurped by people that also put their pants on one leg at a time, who got their authority from other people that put their pants one leg at a time, they started to wake up. They said, wait a second. I'm not inventory. I don't have to live with equity where everybody has nothing. It's crazy. We want to have something. And of course, also we had the Enlightenment coming, books, technologies, industrialization. There was change. They couldn't manage it. The change got away from them. The change, the industrialization, the creativity of man freed man and woman from the chains of hereditary monarchies who were imbued with blessings and legitimacy by the church. That's the old world order. And how did the old world order come down? Republicanism was a big part of it. What is republicanism? Not what is a Republican. That's a guy that puts a funny hat on and goes to a convention. He might be a Democrat. We don't know, unless he tells us what he believes. And then we have to watch how he acts. No, republicanism, the philosophy of republicanism. That's what we need to recover. And that's what this country was all about, creating, operationalizing a philosophy. We call it a republic, but that is also a usurpation of the philosophy. It's freezing something in a fixed position that actually is a very fluid thing. It's a philosophy of life. My philosophy of life is always changing, but in it is included the ideas that are part of republicanism, which is the individual citizen is the sovereign, not a king. The citizen is sovereign. I am sovereign, not my politicians. My politicians aren't the boss. I am the sovereign. They've chosen to run for office. That's great. They're priests, but they work for me. I do not work for them. The concept of republicanism reversed the polarity where we have rulers and the ruled, and we said, hey, we're sovereign. And then the Constitution created a framework that protected that original idea that the individual subject was the sovereign. Go look up sovereign. Sovereign is the king. I'm the king. I'm not inventory. So that fundamental idea, we got to get that building block in there. So when Royce is talking about the value of your citizenship, the value of my citizenship, we are kings and queens. We are granted unalienable rights, not by people who have illegitimate authority or semi-legitimate authority that we hope they live up to, but no, by the Creator itself. I don't want to say himself because I know I have women listening, but in my generation, it's the Creator himself, or the natural way, or the energies that we can't understand, that unseen world. We know it's out there. It's granted me unalienable rights. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of my own happiness in any way I want to. The fundamental cornerstone of republicanism. And what Kamala is pitching us is its reversal. What she's saying is, we're all the same. We're all going to be the same. Equity. We're going to have a class of people that have to run the machine. What republicanism is saying is, I'm granted these rights and I can go as far as I want to, as long as I want to, in any way I want to. I'm free. I'm the king. Ooh, we got to work this out now. We got to rework this. I got to work it through with you because there's a reason why this has been eroded. Because when you're free, you're responsible. I'm responsible for myself. I got nobody to blame but me. I have nobody to project onto and say, oh, you did this to me. Like that identity politics. So I'm going to leave you with this. Thank you for staying a little bit longer. We have all these groups that have been oppressed. Women were property. Black people were property. Jews were slaves. Did you know Jews were slaves in Egypt for 400 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in the Bible, right?
That's the story of Exodus.
Okay.
One of the books of the Christian Bible, because it's one book. Exodus, the story of how Moses and Aaron worked together to free the Israelites from bondage with rigor. They worked these people like inventory. How God himself, and not an angel, not a seraph, but God himself freed the Israelites because he heard their pleas and their suffering. And he had a relationship with them that went back to Abraham because that's where it started, was Abraham. And Jews, Israelites, we could have identity politics, and we do. But let me tell you the part of the identity politics I love. We have this mechanism. I'm going to keep talking about it because we need it culturally here in the United States. Jews were slaves. Slaves. Just like black people. Slaves. Whipped. Killed. Their firstborns killed. Controlled. Worked to death. When we were freed, we were freed. We were freed, and we believed that we were freed by God himself. Now, whether or not that's a Tahoe miracle, as Jules was saying at the end of Pulp Fiction, that's not the point. It's that we feel touched by the hand of God. We feel it. We feel God got involved. Just like Joe, you got to go watch Pulp Fiction. Can't put it up because the machine won't let us show that scene. Because it really is about redemption. How people move from slavery to freedom. There's a miracle. A miracle happened. And whether or not it was a Tahoyl miracle is irrelevant. The Jewish people believed that they were touched by God. And then they made a ritual called the Seder, which is the Last Supper. You know about the Last Supper, right?
Yeah,
Did you know that was a Passover Seder?
I did not.
Great. You see, when they cut out the facts,
Yeah.
you have no idea what you're doing. Jesus, his Last Supper, was the remembrance of God, the belief that the Jews had, their ritual of believing that God rescued them from slavery, or rescued women from bondage, or rescued black people from slavery, or rescued these South Americans and all these people that are in this great migration, rescued them from bondage and in poverty. And instead of letting these godless communist professors use these people like inventory, we need an American ritual based on republicanism where we restore that knowledge of a creator that grants unalienable rights. It's right in our document, the reconciliation, removing the priests. And you know what they did? They said, well, how are we going to do this? We're going to have lawyers, and they're going to be ethical and good and true. And they're going to base their actions on precedent and rule of law. And it's going to go back all the way to Abraham. And every school that we set up is going to teach Christianity. And these lawyers are here to serve the people. And that's how it started. So the lawyers are our modern priests. And just the way the priests of old became corrupt and lost their way and became the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the non-believers, leading to the diaspora and the end of the temple. Just that same way, the new temple, the new Jerusalem, America, is being ruled by a new set of kings and monarchs whose priests are the lawyers. And in these schools, they do not teach about God. They do not teach about faith or Christianity. They teach faithlessness. And now our lawyers have lost their way. So when I say that the political, elective politics is political theater that is manipulated by the military-industrial complex, it's bread and circuses, the action's over here in the law schools and with the lawyers. We got a long way to go to save this republicanism. But we're starting. You got to start. You got to take that first step. So thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing new people to the podcast. Thank you for thinking about the ideas. Thank you for communicating with me. Thank you for being well. Thank you for having the strength to continue. Thank you for influencing the people around you. Thank you for voting in the primary on August 13th. And on that note, I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
about the children, yo? No shoes on their feet. What about the people, yeah, who don't get enough to eat? What about the babies, yeah, living in the streets? Hey, what's the solution? Fly like an eagle, till I'm free. I wanna fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. Fly like an eagle to the sea, Lord, to the revolution. What about the babies, y'all, with no shoes on their feet? What about the people, yeah, moving in the street? What about the children who don't get enough to eat? What's the solution? I wanna fly like an eagle till I'm free. I wanna fly like an eagle to the sea. I wanna fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. Lord, Lord, to the revolution. Time keeps on moving, moving away. Time keeps on grooving, day by day. Time keeps on moving us away. Lord, from the revolution, I wanna fly like an eagle